and welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with your host, Daniel.
And Daniel.
Daniel, I am very excited for this episode today.
It's going to be a fun one.
Genuinely. I brought this idea up, how long ago? Maybe a few months ago?
I think it was about February when we came up with the idea, but we were already booked.
We were already booked out, right? And I was like, no, I want to do this. And you're like, I'm like, no. I don't care about your opinion. I want to do this.
No, it wasn't that I was like, I was like, okay, but how we do it? Because usually when we do Chits and Giggles, we do eight.
Right. And we came up with a good compromise. So this episode today is going to be our Mount Rushmore of gaming. And what this is simply, we're going to talk about the 4 faces that we think are, super important, innovative, whatever, who we think are like the founding fathers of board gaming, right? Yeah. And who would be, if there was a statue of 4 faces on it, who would be the designer? So we'd vote for that. But since we normally pick 8 each,
we have 4.
We have 4 honorable mentions. Exactly. So,
and I went a little weird with my honorable mentions. Not like super weird, but I just thought it was interesting because my first 4, the way I did my Mount Rushmore is the same way like how the certain presidents got on the Mount Rushmore.
Sure.
Is the 4 designers I believe have like the biggest impact in board gaming in general, outside of, say, my personal taste.
Right.
So I could not be a fan of some, and I like every single designer I have on my list.
I like most of mine,
But I think all of these have an impact on one way or another. And not to spoil anything, our friend here in the chat, Illuminous, put Gary Gygax on the thing, and I thought about him. I did not put him on my personal list because I was specifically talking about board games, even though he's had a big thing to deal with board gaming and just gaming, tabletop gaming in general. Because Gary Gygax, for those who don't know, created D&D, which is a
one of the
biggest. But he was one of them. Right. But he was one of the biggest RPGs. A lot of board games nowadays pull from Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that when it comes into that fantasy theme.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, so we'll talk about each of our reasoning when we get to it. Illuminous is bringing up D&D is a board game, of course.
Yeah, but I specifically did go with Gary Gygax because he's a RPG more so for that.
That makes sense. All right. Well, with that being said, first off, before we get into today's episode, Daniel, what have you been playing?
And I'm looking forward to this one because we talked about 2 games last week, but there was so many games I wanted to talk about.
Right.
I get to do 2 more, so I get to do 4 games and 6 games in 2 weeks, and I'm happy about that. So the first one I want to talk about is a game that you and I both played. May or may not be on my designer's list. It's one of his newest games here. And unfortunately, I don't know how I feel about this game still. I want to play it some more to see how it goes. It's Matt Leacock's newest game, Daybreak.
Yeah.
It's a new co-op. I think it has a very interesting theme on it. I love the concept of that theme, trying to get to net neutrality, basically trying to save the environment, save the world. The game can be brutal. We actually got really, really close to winning the game. I think it was like a couple turns or 2 that we hit net neutrality, but there was like our next bad thing that happened. We ended up losing the game. I liked what it does. I have a little bit of issues with it because it just doesn't feel like there's a lot of mitigation that you can do. But I like that engine building concept where I can play this card to use its ability, or I can use it as a tag to make this card's ability a lot better. I can discard these cards, or I can share these cards with you guys. This way, by using a special power, this way something happens. Or I can use this card to help mitigate this, or I can use this card because you have that power to flip this over for we can see the bad thing that's coming up. This is a basically next step, like a Pandemic, like the Forbidden series, where it's a lot more complex than you would expect. And I would expect it to be more complex since it's at its core, it's a cooperative engine builder. So I expect it to be really ramped up when it comes to like the engine building aspect of it, because engine builders, outside of like gizmos and stuff like that, they're not a simple-esque game. I did like it. The art is great. The rule book is horrible. I just could not stand the way it was structured. I wish more people just did more succinct. This is like, oh, if you do this, and then it gives you like the example. But I'm like, but it doesn't explain the answer I'm looking for. Or if it does reference that answer, it's a small little sentence, like 2 pages over for where I'm actually looking, where the action is supposedly at.
Yeah.
So the structure needs to be better in the rule book. The game is fine. I don't know where it sits for me, like in the Matt Leacock echelon of gaming.
Sure.
Like all his games, because I like Pandemic, I like Forbidden Island, I like Forbidden Desert.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the stuff that he's done. Like Pandemic Legacy is still one of my favorite games out there. Yeah. But I don't know. I have to play it more. The one-time plague, I can't, like, when we're talking about later recording reviews and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
This one just kind of feels to me like I need to play it more before I get like a real good feel.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, a little spoiler alert, it's not getting easy to play, because that thing was not easy to teach.
No, it really wasn't.
But I did enjoy the play, and I know it's a good game, because when I'm thinking about what I could have done better after I played it, about like literally putting it on my list here, I'm still thinking about like, what could I've done better? That tells you there's something there.
Yeah.
But I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, so, I mean, listeners of the podcast will know that this was on my anticipated games 2 years ago. Or not this last year, but the year prior.
Yeah.
And I was really excited to do it, because as soon as I heard about it, I'm like, man, I wish I'd backed the Kickstarter. I just didn't have the money at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to play it, and I was very, very much excited. And I told you when you were like, Daybreak, I'm like, yes, count me in. I'm so excited. I can't wait to play. And then we played it. And what's weird about this game, and I don't know how I'm going to be able to describe this other than I liked everything it did except for all of it. Like,
I get
you
it.
know what I mean? Like the action selection.
The parts.
Cool. Yeah.
The parts of it is really good. The whole of it is eh.
I don't know if
you like the parts, not the whole.
Exactly. Like, I love the engine building. That was cool. I like how you could slide the cards above or below. That was cool. I like the cooperative nature of it. That was cool. The mitigating the things. That was cool. Components. Beautiful. Awesome. And yet, for some reason, at the end of the day, I was like, that was so much upkeep for this.
Yeah,
and
it was.
As much fun as I had making the choices that I had making, that's why we put arbitrary choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do feel that they gave you too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time,
well,
it's not that it wasn't restricted. It's just it's like with the amount of information I know, I don't think I could realistically predict anything. So I'm gonna kind of do what's cool and hope it works out.
Yeah. And the thing about when we're talking about arbitrary choice, when we're talking about like in our reviews and stuff like that, or 5 criteria. The thing about it is the arbitrary choice or AP. This actually hits both of those things, because everything's so good. There's nothing.
Right.
There's no great choice. It's basically just arbitrary based on your choices. But also you're sitting there like, oh, do I do this one or do I do this one? And so the AP slows everything down. So
it's because
it's a double ding on that one.
It's a double ding, and then at the same time, it's because the cooperative nature of the game, you're like, I don't want to let you down, but I don't feel like there's anything specifically good enough for me to do, or everything's too good, so I kind of don't care what you do, I kind of don't care what I do.
Yeah.
And then, like, I remember at the beginning of every round, we were all just, like, looking at each other, it's like, okay, well, I'll just go first, whatever, and then I'll just dump some cards, and you guys just figure it out from there.
Yeah.
Because at that point, we're like, we're not going to be able to realistically math this out and figure that out. We probably could, but that would be a 40-minute round.
And the thing about it is, too, is like the bad stuff, you only know for sure one that's coming up unless you flip the other cards over and you need a special power. Only one of us, out of the 3 of us at the table, had that power. But at that point, is like, do I spend what I need over here on that power for us to find out? And a lot of them, they were bad, but they weren't like stupid bad.
Right.
So it's like, do we just like, let's see what we can do and go with it kind of thing? Yeah.
It's just, and then also the adding up, it's like, well, you have 20-something, like, fuel, I have 15, you have 45, every 5 matters, but it's mitigated by these ones. Like, it's just like,
any excess then raises the temperature.
Yeah, it's like, I get it, but, like, at the same time, like, but what am I trying to do here? Like, I mean, I wanted to not, so that's all I don't know. I am willing to play it again.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's like I want to play it a couple more times
Right.
because it seems like there's a lot of moving parts. And honestly, I say it like this with Daybreak.
Yeah.
I honestly think it's a co-op style route. It's not it's a lifestyle board game. You need to play it a lot to get the nuances and stuff like that. Every little trick and turn and nook and cranny. I'm not a lifestyle gamer. I'll bring a game out maybe once or twice a year, if that.
Yeah.
Some games I'll play once and be like, no, it's not for me, and I'll get rid of it.
Yeah.
This one is like, I liked what it did. Like, as you were saying, I liked all the parts of it, but as a whole, I'm still unsure.
Right. I couldn't agree more. So next time we play it, we'll have more information. First one I want to talk about today is a print and play. In fact, actually, you have a print version right here that I made for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just flash it on the screen real quick because I'm going to talk about it. This is called the Cubes of Europe, and I've been playing it quite a bit lately. So what this game is, there was a contest on Board Game Geek about a 9-card game.
Yep.
And this person saw that challenge and was like, okay, I want to make a game based off of one of my favorite games, Castles of Burgundy. So he made a 9-card version of Castles of Burgundy. It has like 24 tokens, 2 dice, and 9 cards. That's it.
Yeah.
And the rule book, of course.
It seems interesting. I was looking at the rules and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, the way it works is, let me pull this up real quick just to show a little bit of the map. So there's 9 maps. At the beginning of the game, you shuffle up these 9 cards and you deal one of them, and that'll be your board for the game. On the back of all the other cards is these, where they have different colors and dice symbols, and you're going to have 2 cards next to each other. And the 2 cards, the numbers 1 through 6 that are made up of the touching sides, that makes up the market. And that is the kind of cubes you can buy for that market. It's not limited like Castles of Burgundy, where once they're gone, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
No, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to buy the cubes, which are the different building types. You put them on one of your 3 storage, or you spend a die to build the cube onto one of your spaces on your map, each with different abilities, or you discard it for a worker. That's the 3 actions you could do. There's no shipping goods or anything. For those of you who are familiar with that. You're trying to, it's a solo game, and you're trying to get the highest score you can by filling in different regions. At the end of the game, if it's 1, 2, 3, or 4 spaces large for each region that's next to each other, you get 1, 3, 6, or 10 points for that. And also, the different building types have different abilities. Mm-hmm. So when you build a blue cube, you get a worker for free. When you build a green cube, it's just worth an extra point at the end of the game. A yellow cube, well, I'll get to yellow in a minute. White cube lets you place a worker, and red lets you, not place a worker, place a cube, and red lets you gain an extra cube from the supply.
Okay.
And they all have to be built adjacent. However, the yellow cubes, this is what makes it really interesting. At the bottom of every single one of those market cards, it has an ability, whether it's endgame points or whether it's continuous abilities, like you get a -1 or a +1 to a die roll or whatever. And when you build a yellow building, you take whatever the rightmost card is and you slide it onto your board as its ability for the rest of the game.
Okay.
You go through the deck twice, getting a little bit of penalty if you haven't built your yellow cubes yet. And at the end of that round, 14 turns, I think, you score up points, and that's it. It works really well. It works really smooth. I have played it a lot, actually. I mean, probably altogether, I probably played it like a half dozen to a dozen times by now.
Nice.
And I'm really enjoying it. Like, nice. I hope this gets published because I will buy it 100%.
No, it looks interesting. I haven't been able to really mess with it all that much.
Oh, sure.
Because I got to dig through.
It's still not cut open, right?
Yeah, well, I have to dig through my closet for one thing because I need to get my cubes out of there because I have them in a spare box. Mm-hmm. And then 2, I just been busy with other things.
Yeah, you have a life, right? Yeah. I, however, do not. So,
well, it's your break time game, really, right?
Yeah, it really was. Like, I was bringing it to work for a lot of times, so, like, when I have, like, 15 minutes, I'm like, all right, I just need to, like, de-workify for a few minutes. Let me bust this game out. Boom, 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 boom. And, yeah, I mean, it's super exciting. And it works. It works. Like,
could you keep it like in a mint tin or something like that? It's just something real small that you can keep in your pocket.
So when I bought my new little wallet, it came in a box about a 2-piece box about yay big, about the size of like a wallet, and I keep it in there with my dice, and it works perfectly. I sleeve the cards, no problem. I got to give it a shout out. Like the only way you can find it is if you Google Cubes of Europe. Mm-hmm. And find the Board Game Geek contest. There was also like a video reviewer who just printed out and did it. And I don't know the status of the contest. I don't even know if it's going on or if it's done or whatever.
Okay.
But having found this, I fell in love with it. I think it's an awesome game and it's a really cool design. So the designer of that, who I don't remember the name of, like, really
good job.
Great job. Please go support it. Go check it out. Print it out. It's awesome.
So, quick question. Side tangent. You talked about your wallet. How are you liking the new slim style wallet?
I'm liking it. I carry both wallets.
You still carry your other wallet?
I still carry both wallets.
Oh, God.
Because I don't want the clips jabbing into my leg.
You know what you do with the clip if you're not going to have cash in it? Use it to hook into your pocket, the side.
Oh, that's a smart idea.
That's what I do with mine when I don't have money in the actual money clip.
I always have money. I carry a lot of money. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true.
I don't carry that much cash on me. I do when I have cash. I put it in my thing. It's so small, it doesn't poke you. If you put the money clip face up instead of down into your side, it's fine.
Okay. No,
I've been enjoying it. I'm like, I can't go back to a regular wallet.
Yeah, I know. I've carried a wallet for so many years, and I was like, but I always carried my money outside of my wallet. I mainly bought it for the money clip part of it. That's the part.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And if you put it in your money clip, like I said, when there's cash in there, it's not really going to dig into your leg.
Yeah.
And if you put your money clip side up, facing the outside of your leg, it's not going to dig into your pocket at all.
Fair enough.
In your leg.
Yeah.
I've learned that trick.
Yeah.
So the next game I'm going to talk about is a game that we've actually, and it's interesting. So I don't know. I forgot I didn't I put this on my list, not thinking about what's going to happen. So, spoiler alert: we recorded our interview with Charlie Beak and Underdog Games.
Oh sure, yeah.
A couple weeks ago. I put her story, and I told him when we were interviewing him that I hadn't played it yet. Well, no. I finally played it. Now I'm talking about it, but in the future it's going to say I haven't played it yet. So just everybody know, next week's episode, I fixed that part of it. Yeah. I have finally played it. My wife wanted to play it recently, so I took it over to one of our game nights with our couple friends.
To hear your thoughts on this.
So, like I said, finally played. You know what I call it? Historical Splendor.
Yeah, that's not wrong.
It's a lot like Splendor. You're either taking tokens to help you buy something. You're only allowed so many, 5 tokens or something like that.
Yeah.
You use those tokens to either, after you reserved a certain historical figure, a historical woman figure, in your chapters, you're basically researching or whatever it is, and you can put them in your thing, and you get 2 points if you hold them. You can only ever hold 2 at a time. And then if you have the tokens for it, you can outright take someone out of the tableau, or you could pay for one of your reserves. Mm-hmm. Splendor. Everybody, if you're familiar with Splendor, you're familiar with the mechanism on this one.
Yeah, the basic idea. Yeah.
I like this one a lot more than Splendor. And it's just because
I know you're not a big fan of Splendor.
Well, I'm not a big fan of Splendor.
Yeah.
But I'm also a big history guy, and I love the historical part of this thing. I love the learning about like Amelia Earhart or some of the women that are in there, because I think Sandra Day O'Connor is in there. She was the first ever Supreme Court justice, woman Supreme Court justice. Or Ruth Bader Ginsburg was in there. And just hearing about all these historical women. And the thing about it is, my wife is not a history buff, but she was enjoying learning all these characters and stuff like that, because they're 50% of our population, yet they're not as talked about, even though they might. Madame Marie Curie basically gave my wife her job because she found radiation and X-ray and all this and that, and now my wife went from an X-ray tech to an MRI tech to what she's doing now because of what Marie Curie did. So I loved every aspect of the historical side. It's a really well-designed game. Very clean. Emerson Masucci, Danielle Reynolds, and I can't remember who the third designer is.
Nate Murray, I think. I think.
Really well done game. I enjoyed it. Like I said, it's a clean game like Splendor. So if you're familiar with Splendor, you're going to pick this one up really well. I like the fact that when you're done, you could turn your thing over and it becomes a book that you could read chapters on and stuff like that.
Which is super neat.
What I like about it is you're basically researching a book, or as I was telling the group, we're just like college students. We're researching like historical figures, because that's how I remember researching my historical figures. I'd have to go this, or I had to do interviews, like if you could find like modern historical figures and stuff like that. But you do a lot of researching. When when I was in college. I was a history major. I had to do a research paper on World War II. I interviewed people who fought in World War II. I read my grandfather's journals about his experience in World War II. So it brought up a lot of memories of when I was studying as a history major on that aspect when you're doing the research and stuff like that. So I thought that was really neat. It's very simple. I like the game. It's not my favorite of the Underdog series. I understand why they're a little upset that it didn't get the love that it deserves, because it's a really well done game. I enjoy it. It's just not one that I'm going to pull off the shelf all the time. When I want to do something historical that gives me a little bit more feeling into it, I'll do something like Freedom, the Underground Railroad, or if I want something that gives me that little short and sweet but little history, I'll do Trekking Through History. But I like what it does. I will play it more frequently. It's not going anywhere out of my collection. I did enjoy it.
Cool. Yeah, and one of the things that Charlie Bing brought up that I thought was really cool,
which you'll see next week,
and Danielle Reynolds, like a lot of the women that they got, these historical figures, they didn't just stick to like the well-known ones.
Yeah.
Like, like sure, there's like the same handful of women that's like, yeah, these are women of history, but like they really went out of their way to try and find like, hey, these are like really unknown women that we should know about.
Famous poets.
Yeah, famous poets. They had like game designers. Like they had like all of these historical event women. Like I wish I could say more about it, but like it was really neat on the different things that they had. So I mean, and the components, the bag alone, I love that bag where it's almost like a pleather.
Oh, yeah, that thing is amazing.
Yeah, and the game mat is nice. Just all sorts of good stuff. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wish it got more love. I really do.
Oh, damn, that's a good one.
All right,
sorry, I'm looking at something real quick.
Yeah, we'll look at it during our break.
Yeah.
All right, so, so I have it too. The next game I wanted to talk about was a game that I forced you to play. And, all right, now we gotta look at this since you're looking. Come on now.
No, you talk about your game real quick. All right,
I'll look here in a bit. All right, so... It's a game that I forced you to play because it's one that I had been wanting you to try for a long time. So I brought it over for my pick. And this game, it's a really simple premise, but it's a cool idea. Speaking of history, right? We played Expedition Northwest Passage. This is a tile laying game. What?
Sorry, just bringing this up. We were just talking about this, was it last week?
Yes.
So the reason why I'm laughing is it was a fun game. We had a good time with it. It pissed our friend Gamehead Geek off.
Yes, and I feel really bad.
He walked out of game night, mind you, he was also really tired. So
yeah, he had a long day, and he came over and he played it, and he put himself in a position where he was effectively eliminated halfway.
I was hoping this was going to be on your list.
Yeah, and and I feel bad for that. It's nothing that we could have retconned. It's like take some.
And you explained it that like.
Yeah, and at the top of the game I was like, this game
is punishing.
It is punishing, and it will be unforgiving on this aspect alone. So keep that in mind. And he dumped all of his workers onto the sled, and then the sled got stuck as the ice melted.
Well, he got to the Northwest Passage, got the points there, but all his people were stuck in the sled.
Right.
And couldn't move.
And nobody was on the boat.
Yeah.
Except for like maybe one worker or something like that.
Oh, all his workers were on the sled.
Yeah, because he was confident he was going to get it back in time, and he just didn't. And he effectively eliminated himself. Which, in a Euro game, that's so brutal.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. He ended up with, I think, 2 points. Out of we had like 30.
Well, he was leading the game until that happened, and then because in the thing about Northwest Passage, when you don't get back by the end of the game, it's -2 points for every person that doesn't make it back.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, it's really brutal.
So he lost 16 points because his boat didn't make it back and his people didn't make it back.
Yep. Poor guy. Yeah, he would have done better too, but it is what it is. But our friend Gamehead Geek, I'm sorry, I apologize. But everybody else had a great time because this game, it's a tile laying. I already like tile laying. It's route building, right? In a weird way that routes can modify based on what time of the year it is, which is already unique. I haven't seen that in many other games.
Yeah.
The art is kind of dry, but I also kind of really like it. Like I like the box cover.
I like the new one that just was on Kickstarter. Looks really good.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. It's always been one of my enjoyable games. I played it originally on Board Game Arena.
This is the first time you played your physical copy, right?
Second.
Oh, second time.
This is the second time, I believe. Yeah, and I just. It's not going anywhere in my collection, but I get the collective like like that.
No. It wasn't a collective. It was just one of those things. And we've talked about it. I think with the next game I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about it. But it's something that I'm glad you own. And if you really wanted to play it again, I'd be willing to play it again. Yep. It's just one of those games that I don't need to go out and get because I don't think it's going to go well with my other group.
Yeah, and I don't think it would.
Especially
either. And I don't think it would go well with my other group too. I just there's a special place in my heart for it. Like whether I'm going to play it that often or not, I'm going to keep it around because
I don't disagree with you. I think it's
so long.
I think it's a fantastic game. It's really well done. I enjoyed the mess out of it.
Yeah.
I was very hesitant to go find the Northwest Passage because I'm like, by the time I get there, I'll have the lowest point total there.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to stay in this game, I'm just going to come play around with these things over here,
which is a viable strategy,
and then book it back to the end of the game and take the first token there. It's not as many points as being the first one to the Northwest Passage, but it's still a good amount of points. I still think I ended up in third place, but it was really close.
Yeah, but not by far. So you've had a very legitimate strategy. Me and Dom both very much went to the south border where we knew it wasn't going to freeze over.
Yeah.
We collectively built that path where we were racing, and he just trudged out just barely before me, which is awesome. And then you were like, you know what? What's the point, right?
My boat got stuck for 2 turns, so I was like,
right. And had that not happened, then I think you would have.
I would have tried.
You probably would have been on top, actually. I feel. But and that's what's cool about it is that's one of those games where it's like. It's easy enough to understand, but it's easy enough to get caught being messed over, and therefore, if that's the case, then I can see why you might not be the biggest fan of it right in the initial game. But the second time you play it, if you played it with the same group, I think you would have a lot better of a time, and it'd be a lot tighter of a race.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, I enjoyed the best out of
Passage.
it. So. Speaking of tile placing game, I'm not going to be able to talk about this one because there's only so many games I can talk about.
Sure.
But I wanted to let you know that I finally did play Beacon Patrol.
Oh, okay.
I enjoyed the mess out of that game.
Yeah,
Beacon Patrol is a fun little puzzle.
Oh, okay.
So the next game I'm going to talk about is what we just recently.
And now I'm looking at what he got in the box.
Most recently played, and that was Merchants of the Dark Road. And as I was mentioning earlier, Northwest Passage, I was glad you got that one. I'm glad our friend Dammit Dom owns this one. Because as much as I like the game, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the game a lot. I enjoyed it. It was a fun game. It was had a lot of moving parts, but honestly, very simplistic for all those moving parts. It was very straightforward. You were able to understand what you were doing. You're just going around the rondel. My biggest issue with it took me a little bit to Gronk, and I think it took you a little bit longer to Gronk it, is that the dice that you move up becomes your first part of the power, and the dice that you bump out of there becomes your movement. So if I'm moving a 2 dice into my blacksmithing area and I'm making, let's say, a shield, I forget what it was, but I think it's like a hammer or gun or something like that. And then you move that die that was a 3, I'm moving 3 around the rondel. I thought that took a little bit to figure out, okay, if I move this here, then that's going to become my movement dice. Okay, and it took me a little bit to figure that part out. What I liked about was that rondel, because you weren't beholden to where you stopped, because where you stopped, you had a power to do where you could do one or the other action in there. So, and every spot basically allowed you to do one of 2 actions. And then some of those actions, or all those actions at least, were shared. So if I'm on this one and I really wanted to do that power, and if I did a 3, I overshot it, but it's on the other side of where I ended up landing. And so instead of, this way I can get I forget what it's called, but it's what you have to take through the Dark Road, because it's at a core, pick up and deliver in a sense. So it gave you the contracts.
The contracts or the people. The
you could go to the contract in Dark Road. So it's I could go here to get something from the shop, or I could do the contracts. I really need to pick up a contract, so I got to go over here. Oh, crud! I moved a 3 over there. I overshot it by 1, but I still can pick up my contract that I need. And now I got to make sure, can I do a 0 up here? This way I could do the Dark Road. And if you have an illuminated die, you can use that die to trigger all 3 locations that are in that area, because there is a third location, but you can only ever activate that location if you have an illuminated die to spin to do it. And so I like that aspect because those are pretty good powers. I love the whole pick up and deliver aspect where you could turn in the characters that you pick up for your caravan and take them basically to their home city, plus pay your contract. So you're trying to gather heroes, is I think what they were called, to add to your caravan, who goes to a certain city, and then you're going to go try to get a contract that you can fulfill in that city. So you're trying to get the resources in there. And if you're the first one there, you get to do a special power if you're basically the lead of the caravan, because people can follow you on your caravan. Yeah. I like that aspect of it too.
Yeah.
And I had a special ability where if I followed someone, I don't have to go to the outlying cities. I can go to wherever I wanted because of my steed.
Yeah.
So I like that about aspect. But like if you were leading the caravan and Dammit Dom went with you, he either had to go to the same place you're at or the 2 cities that are connected to it. I like that aspect. So it's like, do I go with you or do I not go with you?
Yeah.
If I'm leading the caravan, I also get a special reward, and I can choose to do this, I can choose to do that, or I get an upgraded power, which I'm not gonna lie, I love that the upgraded powers. You only get to have one of those upgraded powers,
but it's still really cool.
The one I picked, I got the first chance of it. Anytime I made something, it basically became the better aspect of it.
Yeah.
So a shiny in a sense, because it was more shiny on the other side.
Yeah,
I got a shiny Pokemon. So and what was cool was whenever you turn in something, if you turn in the full set, you got 6 points. If you turn in 2 of the 3 that is required there, you got 3 points. And if you turn in 1, you got 1 point. But if you turn in any of those sets that are the next step, like the shinies as we were calling them, you get a bonus point. So I like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
If you do it because you can sell your equipment to the hero that you're hiring basically to get on your caravan, he'll give you money. If you say a shiny, it gives you a little bonus on that one aspect as well. So
yeah.
I loved a lot of the push and pull aspect. I just think it is very convoluted, even though it's very simplistic, as I said, that my other group just aren't going to be enthralled. And as pretty as this game is, and it's very pretty, it is a very pretty themeless Euro, in all honesty. It really is.
Yes, it is.
But I liked every minute of it, and that's Merchants of the Dark Road.
Cool. All right. The next one, and I agree with what you were saying. Like Merchants of the Dark Road, I don't know. Like I liked it.
I thought it was good.
It was good.
Like I said, I have no
don't think
problem.
I'd play it again.
I'd play it again if he wanted to get to the table.
No, that's true. If he brought it in, it was like, let's play again. I'm like, all right.
Sure. I have no problem playing it again. It's not something I'm going to go out of my way for.
Yeah. I would not choose it as one of my picks. Yeah, it was cool. I get why a lot of people like it. I just didn't like it. Like, again, it goes into that too much of a good thing, right?
Well, the thing is, like,
and it's like I got to do this action on my turn, but I have to move my die, which will determine what action I take, but that also determines which move I take and which of the 2 locations I get to do, and which of the permutation of that location I get to decide.
It's one of those things that I call that I've been recently calling is a kitchen sink game. It's where it's like you're doing this to do this to do this to get points.
Right.
I'm like, well, why do we need all these extra steps? Let's just do this to do this.
Yeah.
Like I love the doing the rondelle part.
Mm-hmm.
I love the pick up and deliver part. I love the way you're doing the dice management, but you don't need all that to do a good game.
Correct. Yeah, I completely agree. All right, next one I want to talk about. It's a game from 1975.
Bazaar?
Nope.
Huh.
Although I did play Bazaar.
That's the only reason that popped in my head because I saw that picture.
That's from the 60s. So, from 1975, this game is called the Bermuda Triangle. A buddy of mine came in from town. He bought it at, like, I want to say an estate sale or something. And he brought it, and he was just showing us, he was like, I'm so amazed that, like, all of the original pieces are there, all the cards are there, all the components still work just fine, and it works. It's a big board, and in the middle of the board there's a big grid, and you have this big plastic storm piece.
I think I've seen this game.
Maybe, yeah.
I've never played it, but I think I've seen pieces of it. Like, you know where I think I saw it? I think it used to be on Board Game Blender, Dice Tower.
Maybe.
Well, what's his name? Asdrubal. who would always talk about like the classic Milton Bradley Hasbro.
Sure,
I think it was on that. It was one of his on there.
It could be. Because the idea is that you have this giant plastic piece that's this oblong-shaped storm tile, right? And it's lifted up above the board, maybe half an inch or so, and has some metal pieces in it, and I'll get to that in a minute. But then everybody has 4 boats. You start on each of the 4 sides, and there's ports. And once you sail a boat to another port, following along the line, then you get to take one of the goods cards, and it's worth anywhere from $20,000 to $90,000 or whatever. And you're aiming to get $350,000, or you can do a short game for $200,000.
Okay.
Anyway, or one person will be entirely eliminated. In which case the game also ends. It doesn't make you play it out. It doesn't make one player sit out, which is good.
Especially for 1975.
Right, exactly. It's like whichever happens, then whoever has the most money then wins. But all of the boat pieces that you have magnets on them, and you can see where this is going. At the end, once everybody's taken a turn, you roll a single d6. You move one of your boats as that number of spaces. You choose which boat it is. Unless it's your only option and it's going towards the storm, you don't go under the storm. Right? You just go as far as you can until you're not under the storm. Then your boat moves. And so it's like, it's not super unforgiving based on that random.
Yeah.
But you do get to choose what you get. But then, once everybody's taken a turn, one player spins the spinner, and that'll tell you 3 things. 1, how the storm rotates. Because remember, it's oblong. It's weird shaped. Parts of it are bigger than others. And so if you're next to the storm and it happens to rotate over you, you might get sucked right up into it, right?
That's cool.
It's just funny.
It looks really neat.
And then it gives you a direction of where you're going, and then it goes in that direction as many spaces as the spinner says. There's one caveat to it, is that if, let's say, there's a bunch of boats stuck to the bottom of it, and it spins in a way where trying to pick up another boat and knocks one of them off for one reason or another, right? Then that boat that gets knocked off of the storm just gets put closest spotted it can be. Simple as that, right?
Why'd you not take a picture of this one? I wanted to see it.
I forgot, yeah. But yeah, so like let's say my boat gets sucked up and somehow knocks one of your boats off. Cool, your boat's free. That's just how it happens.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
I like
it
that.
spits it out. But here's the thing, and all of the boats stay stuck there. If there's too many boats for it to suck up another one, good job. Good job on you. But there's 4 full directions. There's a northeast, west, and south on the spinner, and if it rolls that, then it immediately goes as far in that direction as it can. Then after sucking that off, you remove it from the board and remove all the boats from the game from the bottom of it, and then replace it back in the center of the board.
Oh, that sounds fun.
It's
really
silly, is. And it's not that good, honestly. Like,
yeah, but then again, we and you mentioned it in the Instagram post too. Those are the days where the games that need to be good. They just were fun.
They were just fun. Yeah. Like, you don't go into that going, man, I'm going to have a... Like, if you're looking for heavy strategy, it's not that big, right? You have a choice of one of a few pieces to move. That's it. And you're rolling a single d6, and most of the spaces are like 12 or something. Whatever, right? Have fun with it. But if that's the kind of fun that sounds fun, it is fun, because it's absurd. And I just love, like they knew how clunky that piece is, right? And they're like, well, if it knocks off a boat, just put it in its closest empty space. Problem solved. Like, it knows that going into it. Like, the people who made this game were like, let's just be silly, right? And so far, that's, like, we were having people, like, audibly, like, nervous. Like,
oh god,
oh god. Yeah, and also in an extra bonus, it was 4 of us that were playing, which is the max player count. 3 of us were men, 1 was female. And the rule book was of the time where it only referred to him or her or his or whatever pieces. So we started joking about, it's like, well, this is, before women were allowed to play games, like, and then just...
Well, it's like the old Battleship cover or something like that, where the dad and the son are playing and the mom and daughter are washing dishes.
Yeah, exactly. It was that time frame, right? But then, like, so we started playing into that, and this was, like, my friend's friend who I had just barely met, and we were picking on her, but she seemed in really great spirits. But then halfway through the game, like, she brought up, she's like, wait, is this how this works? And we're like, we think so. And we opened up the rule book, and it was like, but it just says his, so you can just do whatever you want, really. Like, you don't have to follow these rules. And she was like, that's a good point. It was like, can I just throw the die into the storm, and if it knocks off the boat, oh well. It's like, it only says he can't.
Yeah.
So you can. It was just a riot of a time. We had a good time with it. The Bermuda Triangle, it was so ridiculous. Milton Bradley, 1975.
All right, my last game I'm going to talk about, and like I said, I got to play Beacon Patrol. I also got to play another game, City of the Living, which is a Knizia game.
Ooh, okay.
I did like that one. I'll have to explain it to you a little bit after the podcast.
Yeah, please.
But I just recently saw the Dice Tower review on it.
And it was...
I don't disagree with them. It's a fine game. The mitigation is non-existent, but the game that turned out to be the game of that night, because I played Beacon Patrol, I played Mariposa, I played this specific game, and we played a couple others. Hitster was another one we played. We played the co-op
version. Oh, you did buy it?
Yeah, I own it. It should be like right there.
Oh, yeah. But I've played that so many times lately. It's really good.
But it's really good. But I'm like, we just recently talked about it. I did play the co-op version of it, which is really neat, and I found a way that you can make it a little bit more difficult.
Okay, cool.
But I'll explain to you how to do it.
Explain to me later,
Yeah, but the game that I finally played is a game that I traded for earlier this year. I got rid of my copy of Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, and I traded for...
Was this Gamehead Geek that you traded?
No, I traded with Damn It Dom.
Oh, okay.
I ended up getting Mariposas from him.
Oh, okay.
And this is an Elizabeth Hargrave game. And I've been wanting to play this one. It looks really neat. I love the fact that it's about the migration of the monarch butterflies. It's a very simple game, in all honesty. It's so simple. It's just basically you're playing a card and you're moving your butterflies based on that card play. What I like about it, though, the fact that this simple game became the game of the night that we played that night. And we played, like I said, Beacon Patrol. We played Hitster. We played City of the Living. We played the Knizia. We played a fun little party game. We played a nice little co-op tile placement game. And this was the game of the night. My wife's favorite game of this entire night. She really enjoyed it.
Wow.
But what's even more interesting about it, it is very abstract, really. The theme could be anything, and it will still work really well. So what you're doing is you have two cards in your hand, and you start in Matcha, I forget what it's like, Matcha Power or something like that, in Mexico. And so your butterflies start in Mexico, and you're basically migrating up. And then what you're doing after the end of summer, you're playing 4 cards in spring, 5 cards in summer, and 6 cards in fall. So you only have, 15 turns, in a sense. And so you're playing 1 card out, and you're moving your butterfly across the board. If you collected enough flowers, you can propagate a new generation of monarch butterflies. Your whole goal is, by the time you hit fall, is to get your 4th generation butterflies back to Mexico, because that's where you're going to get a lot of your points. Depending on how many butterflies you're going to get in there, you're going to score more points. If you get 1 butterfly, it's 1 point. If it's 2 butterflies, it's like 7 points or something like that. All right, it's 1 butterfly, it's 3 points. 2 butterflies, but you also have into round goals as well. So you're trying to do the push and pull. And every time we move into a next season, we lose generations. So moving from spring to fall, we lose the first generations. Yeah. You moving into fall to summer, you lose your 2 generations. The only time you're going to count your butterflies is if your 4th generations make it back to Mexico. So your 3rd generations, which will stay on the board, you may use those ones for into-game scoring aspects because you don't need to get those back to Mexico. And I love that little aspect of it, because you're sitting there like, I want to get this 4 here back to Mexico because that's going to give me my points. Yeah. But I can move this 3 over here because I need to be this side of Houston for me to get into game scoring too. Yeah. But I need to move this 3 over here, and it's still going to give me, because it's already past Houston, but if I get it over here and click these flowers, I'm going to get the other in-game scoring by having all 5 flowers of some type. So that when you get to that in-game, you're just trying to figure out what you're going to do. The core of the game, you have 2 cards in your hand, you play 1 card. You do what it says. It has different types of movements. You can move, like 1 card will say you move 1 butterfly 5 spaces. Gotcha. If you land next to milkweed and you have the butterfly things, you can make the next generation of butterfly. If you land in a city, which is a way station, They have special abilities, so you have little set collection cards, and you're trying to unlock them, because the first person to unlock those and make it where everybody can get that resource, you get to roll a die, and it gives you a random flower.
Okay.
And so you're not losing out on there. Now anybody else goes there can pick up whatever that resource is that's there. They just don't get to roll the die.
Sure.
And you keep doing that, and you keep going, playing out your cards. And you're just doing it, like when you get closer to the end of the game, you're like, oh god, what am I gonna do now? Do I do this to move here, or do I? Because the thing about the fourth generation butterflies, when you get to the fourth generation, you can breed them again, and they become 2 butterflies. So they count for end of game scoring. If you get that 1 token back to Mexico, it counts for 2 butterflies.
Yep.
So I love that little push and pull. You got this thing. You get 1 point for every one of the way station cards that you collected. You get points based off what you did there. Your end of round scoring, your end of game scoring. There's also some immediate scoring in there based on some of the gold cards that come up. Nice little push and pull aspect of the game. I adored it. It was really well done. I enjoyed the mess out of it. Like I said, it's very abstracted. Mm-hmm. You don't really feel like you're racing butterflies in a sense to get back to Mexico. Yeah. But you're just sitting there, and at one point, it was dead quiet at the table that you could hear my friends' kids playing video games. You could hear their video game noise and the thing, because we're just sitting at the table, like, looking at our cards, like, if I do this, and I go, math, trying to math what your best point total is going to be.
That's awesome.
So I did enjoy the mess out of it.
Do you think I would like it?
I think you would.
Because I had been very curious about it.
Honestly, it's very, you like to say it a lot too, it's very elegant. It's very simple. You just play a card and you move your butterflies, and you're using your resources to make yourself a next generation.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to be like your favorite game of all time, and I don't think you're going to play it and be like, I now got to go get myself a copy, but I think you're still going to enjoy it.
Okay.
So, Mariposas.
Awesome.
I enjoyed the mess out of that one.
And the last game I want to talk about is a cheat, because it's 3 games. So, this is part of this series of games. It's called the Pick a Pen series.
I knew you were going to talk about that one.
I just got it from Amigo and showed it off at our local comic shop. Mm-hmm. And I played all 3 of the games prior to the week, and I'm glad I did, because I played it with different groups. I played one group with my other game group, one with my family, and then another one I played actually at the shop with one of the groups and stuff, and got to play it with them. There's 3 in the series. There's Gardens, Crypts, and Reefs. In Gardens, so all of them work off the same idea first. You have 5 colored pencils: red, green, blue, orange, and purple.
Okay.
And they're big, chunky colored pencils. And on these colored pencils, there's a sticker on it that effectively turn them into dice, different custom dice of different kinds. You roll the pencils, and that will determine, you pick one of the pencils, the color of it will determine what you do, and the face that it's on, that it rolled, will determine the action you do with that color. And they all work the same way. So what if I pick one of the 5, the next player, if it was you, you'd pick one of the remaining 4, and then one of the remaining 3, and we continue going until they're all gone. And then, once they're all gone, the next player who would take their turn gathers them all up, re-rolls them, and then gets first pick. And so it works really well. Simple drafting. Once the game is done, it's always done, and all of them offer different forms of scoring. Mm-hmm. Gardens, what you're trying to do effectively is you're trying to fill in groups of patches of gardens, either with all of the same color, or if they're big enough, at least one of each color, each of the 5 colors for bigger points.
Yeah.
If you get sets of multiple ones, you get more points. And there's also a little bit of a race to whoever fills in their border first, whoever fills in the largest spot, and whoever fills in their board first, which is an endgame trigger. Cool little comboing, fun choices, and it's fun to bridge like the gaps of multiple gardens. That was really cool. But then Crypts looks like it's the simplest one, and it kind of is. What you're trying to do is you pick up the color, and it'll have one of the 5 symbols, and there's rows of those symbols. When you color in the leftmost of that symbol, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the same color next to each other, or next to each other in the same row or in the same column. If you do, it's 2 points if you get that pair of the same color. So if my top one is red, I'm going to try and get the second one to be red as well.
Okay.
But since there's 5 different ones, you can match up the pairs however you want. And you can color in any spot you want, as long as it's the farthest left on that shape. So if I pick up a green triangle, I color in the leftmost green triangle, or triangle green. And if it so happens that the border is the same color, then you get a color and an additional one of your shape with that same color. So it has a little bit of comboing going.
Okay.
Which you can combo from one to the next if you happen to pull it off. Whether that's beneficial is totally different. And so it's cool like how that one works. And then the final one is called Reefs, and it's a route building one. The symbols on the pencils will be either like straight or curvy lines.
Okay.
And it'll be anywhere from 1 to 4 plus spaces. And so when you pick that pencil, that'll tell you from which diver. You have 6 to choose from. Your first one always starts from one of your choice, and then goes in either in a straight line, or you can curve it around if the pencil says so. Then you can curve it around, and you're trying to go up to this matching color treasure spots, which are either worth 2 or 4. If you fill in all 8, you get 10 points. You get at least 2 treasures of each color, you get bonus points. And you cannot double back, or you cannot have 2 colors on the same route, but you can intersect them and cross them.
Mm-hmm.
And that one's a thinky puzzle, but it works really well. And what's even cooler about all 3 of these is they all have this massive pad of paper. I want to say probably like 120 sheets or something like that.
Okay.
It just has many sheets. And there's 3 different levels. And so each game has 3 different levels of game you can play. So if you're used to level 1, you go to level 2 and everybody can play that and adds in some variants. Level 3 does the same, and it changes up gameplay. There is so much game in these 3 games, and I am thoroughly impressed by it. Like and I played this with my family, and once you understand the concept of the picking a pencil, which is the title, of course, then understanding how the pencils work is a small change from the previous game. And what made me really excited about this is I was showing it off at our game night, and one group of 3 players played all 3 games back to back because they're like, yeah, let's just try it. And each of the 3 had a different favorite.
That's
Which
cool.
never happens.
Yeah, that's
They were
cool.
like, yeah, mine was Crips, mine was Gardens, and Reefs was honestly my favorite. Right? I was like, wow, that's amazing. And it just went over really well. I liked it a lot. I've also been playing like another like pencil rolling one called Paper Apps Dungeon, which is a solo one, and it's kind of janky, honestly, like how it works. And so I'm glad I got the Pick a Pen, which happened to be Reiner Knizia anyway.
Yeah.
I hope they continue the line. So I really enjoyed it. That's the Pick a Pen series from Amigo.
Sounds good.
All right, and now let's get into our actual episode today. We're talking about the Mount Rushmore of game designers, and I mean, I was really excited to do this topic. I really am, because this is just something that I think about a lot from the game design aspect of it. We were talking briefly with Ith3, one of our regulars here, and they brought up Phil Walker Harding. Now, he is one of my favorite designers because I appreciate the level of design that he does. He tries to make it simple for the mechanisms and have choice and all that stuff, which is a delicate balance that I don't think a lot of things see. But even though he's one of my favorites, spoiler, he's not on my list just personally because I don't think his impact on the gaming world is as strong as much as it is on my personal taste, right? He's a huge impact on my taste because as soon as he announces a game, I'm like, I'm in, I want to buy it. But I don't know that he has that breadth on the gaming world that I feel like these people really deserve the highlight for.
All right, before we get into the topic, we want to clarify something that we recently did. We just did a giveaway, correct?
Yes, that's right.
The second person that got pulled last week did not claim his prize. We gave him a week to try to claim the prize.
Yep.
Our friend here in the chat, Illuminous, did receive his copy. So we did pull a second name, or a third name in this case, and they are claiming that prize. So
both giveaways. Congratulations, Chaos Cabrera, I believe, is the winner. So congratulations on winning your own personal copy of Matches. If you're listening, which you may or may not be, I don't know, but if you are, I will be happy to sign it. If that's what you want, we'll be reaching out to you soon.
Yep.
So. And, of course, by all means, keep this in mind. If you are one of the people who did not win, I'm so sorry to hear about that. We are going to be giving more games away as the year continues. So,
speaking of which, I already pre-ordered one of our next giveaways.
What?
Yeah.
I can't wait. Maybe it's one of your duplicates.
It's not gonna be. No, it's not one of my duplicates. It's a game that we really enjoyed when we played it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't clarify anything. All right. We play a lot of games we like. All right. With that being said, you know what we should give away? An exclusive for some other channel. Like, that would be hilarious. It's like, we're going to give a Board Game Geek promo.
Dice Tower promo.
A Dice Tower promo. All right. We're going to get into our topic today. This is the Mount Rushmore of gaming.
We're starting with our honorable mentions. The first 4 that basically got out, or however you wanted to do it.
Yeah.
When I went into this one, my top 4 are the ones I believe have one of the most impactful to the gaming world.
Right. Like, if games, like the hobby was its own country, right?
Yeah.
Who were the ones who founded it? Who are the ones who did the most significant changes to make this gaming hobby the way it is?
The honorable mentions, I went around like kind of impact as well as my personal preference from stuff that I've heard from other designers or other designers and other board game creators and stuff like that, and their impact, or relatively new that I think are making an impact, that kind of stuff. Cool. So, and the way I ranked them is 1, slightly based on their impact, and 2, basically out of my favorites. Because when they're on the Mount Rushmore, they're on the Mount Rushmore. So, like, my 4 are basically ranked by my preference to these designers.
Sure.
But they're all very...
They're all there for a reason.
All there for a reason, yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool.
All
right, let's get into our first honorable mention, and we'll start with me. All right, so my first one is a game designer that has been incredibly prolific. I believe he is a German game designer, and this designer has created a number of games over the past decades, right? And he does a lot of collaborations. And one thing that I learned about when I was researching this designer is that he does a lot of those. He works so much with other designers, and he's such a huge part of the community in the area. This is Wolfgang Kramer.
I thought this would have been higher on your list, if not in your Mount Rushmore.
Right. This is.
I thought this would either been your 5 or in your Mount Rushmore.
It was close, honestly.
Because you're a Spiel des Jahres collector.
Yes.
Hasn't he won the most Spiels?
I think so. Yes.
That's why I was like.
No, I think he would. Yeah, I think he did actually, and actually a few of these are Spiel winners, but. Mainly Wolfgang Kramer, just because he's still making games, he's still working on it. But from everything I understand, he, take Kiesling, for example. Kiesling used to just be one of his playtesters, who's a friend of his. They met at a game group, they started working together, and then Kiesling started making his own games, and they started collaborating, and he built up that community, and he was very influential as far as the European game designers, and working with all these people and being kind of like the mentor. What I consider Wolfgang Kramer kind of like what's his name? The founding father who was never a president.
Benjamin Franklin?
Benjamin Franklin, yeah. I consider him the Benjamin Franklin of the gaming world, right? Like, incredibly prolific person, very smart, contributing to all sorts of levels of the gaming community. It's hard not to recognize him, but that, unfortunately, the other 4, I think, have a bigger impact.
Okay, that's an interesting choice. Like I said, I'm shocked that he was this low, because he has a big impact in the gaming world. And I'm like, he's not on my list because I just haven't played enough of his games. I know he has a bit of an impact, but mainly a lot of those games are Euro games that don't come to America.
Right.
Like, one of my favorite games that he's done is 6 Nymped and 11 Nymped. I love both of those games. So my first one has already been mentioned. We talked about it with I3, and the only reason I wanted to get a newer designer on the list, because I think this person could become a Mount Rushmore based on, 1, their elegance, as you like to say, 2, based off of how prolific he already is, and he's only been around since, like, the late 2000s, so... It's coming to about 20 years now for him, but the games that he's been bringing out, and this is Phil Walker Harding, it's a personal favorite of ours. And the thing about it is because when we've interviewed other people or talking to a lot of people at Gamma and stuff like that, they all bring up Phil Walker Harding too. And so he's already making an influence in the board gaming world. It's just I don't know if it's going to make that kind of impact that we've seen with some of these other designers. But the fact that I'm hearing it from publishers, from game designers, from people who've worked with him, other podcasts, or reviewers talking about his games, like I always go and look at the Dice Towers when the Yees look at all the Phil Walker Harding games because they're fans, and I'm like, okay, and I understand. He is hitting like the level of, say, like an Emerson Matsuuchi or a Dr. Rainer Knizia and stuff like that, where people are paying attention to what he's doing.
Yes.
And so I know you didn't put him on your list.
I didn't.
But I wanted to get a newer person on the list because I can see them, if they've been doing this for a while and a little, but give it 10 more years, I could see him getting on Mount Rushmore list because people are paying attention to his designs.
I don't disagree with you. And that the only reason I didn't put him on my list is just because I consider him kind of like a trailblazer, a trendsetter of what he's doing. He's not so much innovating, but he's refining it. He's making great games, but at the same time, he's currently still in there, and it's just because he's born right now. You know, he's still young, right? But his stuff is prolific, and I'm curious to see how it will stand the test.
Yeah, and so I just kind of wanted to put him on the list this way to give him a little bit of love. Because like I said, it's kind of my cheaty pick. It's my outside looking in. I have another cheaty pick that's coming up here soon.
Okay. All right, let's go to our number 2 honorable mention. Also me.
Number 3 honorable mention.
Yeah, well.
Our second honorable mention.
Sure, our second honorable mention, yeah. Mine are in no particular order, by the way. Like I know you ranked yours based on preference, but mine are not in any particular order. This next one is an American designer from classic American designer. He started designing, I think, in the 60s or the 70s. And it's not who you just gave me that face for. It is somebody different. This is Alex Randolph. And, yeah, I think Alex Randolph, he created Code 777, Museum Heist, amongst a slew of other games, right? And he has since been involved with so many different companies and been a long-time designer of games. He is one of those ones that effectively built the hobby, right?
Yeah.
He was involved not only in the game design aspect of it, which he was already respected in that regard, but he's also been in publishing. He's also been in developing.
Yeah.
He's always been in that. And he's just, one of those founding fathers where I think the American board gaming scene has a lot to owe to him just because of the level that he's created for that. I don't have more to say other than if you know anything about him, you know what I'm talking about. He does so much crazy stuff, and I don't know if he's still alive or not. I don't think he is. I apologize if he's not. But yeah, I mean, it's just an amazing designer. I've always enjoyed all the games that he does, and he's kind of like the old man of Phil Walker Harding, right? Like his stuff it's also really simple, but it really works.
Yeah.
And a lot of people use him as an influence. So Alex Randolph, that's my next pick.
All right, so Luminous is saying Vlada needs some love. I don't disagree, but he did not make my list just because.
He's not on mine.
I don't think he's made that much of an impact outside of the hobbyist kind of people.
Right. Yeah.
So going into my next pick is, again, another recent designer. But first off, I wanted to put them on my list because I think that even now they are doing things that nobody would expect would be going on. And to the point where we did an interview and one of our designers brought this person up because they respect them. And this is Elizabeth Hargrave.
Yeah, I thought this. Yeah.
I think she needs to be on something like this list because even though there has been female designers before and there's going to be female designers, we've interviewed one, Danielle Reynolds, after. The fact of the matter is she is bringing more to that light and she's making really good games. I've played only a handful of games, 3 or 4 of her designs. I've liked every single one of them. Mariposa's was really good. Fox Experiment's really good. I love Wingspan, which is one of my favorite games. And she had a hand in the design of Wormspan as well. She was the developer for that one. So she's already getting into the development line. She's got a big one coming in with AEG, a co-design, Undergrove. So she is making a good impact. And when we talk about like games that have made an impact on the industry, Wingspan is one of those games. First off, it became like an evergreen for Stonemaier. They're constantly printing this game out. They're constantly selling copies. When we interviewed Jamie Stegmaier all the way back in, 2020, 2021, something like that, it was already reaching 1 million sales. So it's probably well over that now.
Yep.
So it's done a phenomenal job. She's done a phenomenal job. And so, like, I need to put her on the short list on this one, because if she keeps going the way she's going, she's going to bump off some of these on the honorable mentions just because she's done a heck of a job.
Yeah.
And so that was my number 7, or in this case, my number 3 honorable mention.
All right. Our next honorable mention, here we go. I'll be starting us off again. Now, this one... This gentleman has made a number of designs, 2 of which won the Spiel des Jahres, so of course he was already on my radar. But he does something else that I think sets him apart from the other designers. It's Alan R. Moon, and he
was on my short list.
He's on my list because of one specific thing. He is not only he was a developer for a lot of games. Prior to that, he designed his own game. He's been designing his own games for 30-something years, right? So he's definitely tried and true. And even now, if he comes out with a new game, I'm still ready to be like, okay, like let's see what he's come up with, because of his level of thinking. But he's also the creator of the Gathering of Friends, which those of you guys who do not know what that is, which I would love to be invited one day. Just saying.
It was a board game con just for designers.
Yeah, it was literally just a gathering of friends that he invited other people in the industry to get together, and he basically invited his friends who are part of the industry and gathering together, and they just play each other's games and have fun and play prototypes sometimes and meet each other and have all this time. And it's now became pretty much a convention that he runs or is involved with. But he was the creator of that. Yeah. And I see this as like if we're talking historically, right, why I think this would be the comparison, he's basically like the creator of the Congress part of it, right? He's getting all of these influential people in the industry, he's getting them together, having that hive mind, working together, and in a fun setting, right?
And the thing is, he showed that it works, because now you have Sorry We're French, which is a bunch of French game designers working together, and you do the same thing in Germany and stuff like that.
It's turning it into a collaborative effort, and I know a lot of people that got together from meeting at this became friends, and just on that alone has developed those lasting friendships that they have developed games and created more stuff, and really kind of push the hobby forward. So he is like one of the absolute truest ambassadors to the hobby. Yet I still didn't pick him for my Mount Rushmore yet.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you, and because he's done a lot for the hobby, but I'm talking about like just on the game design aspect of things too. So the con stuff and the Gathering of Friends.
He made Ticket to Ride in Elfinland.
Yeah.
Need I say more?
No, Elfinland. Ticket to Ride, great.
I mean, Elfinland is kind of like the not as clean version of Ticket to Ride.
yeah, exactly.
So there's that.
All right, so my number 6, and I knew I was going to get him on the list because our mutual friend was talking about like Eric Lang and stuff like that when we're talking about like the Ameritrash stuff. You can't talk about Ameritrash without Corey Konecka.
Oh, okay.
And so I knew he had to be on my short list. He was on my short list too. Just because Fantasy Flight, Twilight Imperium 4, just any of the IP games that we are starting to turn our heads around, Battlestar Galactica, Eldritch Horror, or anything Fantasy Flight really, but from the late 2000s to like the mid 2000s.
Yep.
Corey Konecka had a hand in it. He ran Fantasy Flight, and he did a heck of a job with that aspect. So outside of a lot of people love Euro games, he's the one that pushed a lot of the Ameritrash and gave people good themes and just dice chucking, give you that D&D feel where you're rolling dice and you're trying to make connections, but in a board game style where you're doing the dice chucking and be like, that's a hit, that's a hit, that's a hit, great, I do damage to the big bad. And you get those themes and that tension that you would get from something like a Dungeons and Dragons or an Arkham Horror, Call of Cthulhu style RPG, but in a board game feel. And he was able to transition to, Illuminous mentioned Gary Gygax earlier, he's basically the Ameritrash's god of Guy Gax, or designer, because he brought in a lot of that flavor aspect of things.
Yeah.
And so I think he needed at least an honorable mention for what he's done for the Ameritrash world, and now what he's doing with Unexpected Games, because he's not only doing interesting stuff with a lot of theme in it, but he's also doing interesting takes on games. When you're talking about something like the Initiative, where it's basically teaching you deduction in a sense.
Yeah, cryptography.
Cryptography.
Yeah.
When you're talking about Voices in My Head, a little coin pusher game that just was really fun that you wouldn't expect it to be as fun as it is. 3,000 Scoundrels is an interesting concept. Still haven't played that one. He's got a card-based game coming out here soon that was just recently announced called The Mandalorian, based off, again, going back into that theme where you're playing as a bounty hunter in the Mandalorian world. So what he's doing in the Ameritrash, the thematic games, is through the roof, and I needed to make sure he got an honorable mention at the minimum.
Cool. All right, and now to our last honorable mention. Okay, and on brand. All right, so my last honorable mention, I kind of consider the four that I picked for this as like the four pillars of game design. And all
I don't disagree with you on that.
If these four were the founding fathers of games, then this pick that I picked for my honorable mention would be the first settler. This would be the Christopher Columbus, effectively. This is Lizzie McGee Phillips. She is the inventor of the Landlord's game.
Oh, see, I was going to mention this because I did want to make it, and I don't disagree with you on this one. I agree with her wholeheartedly.
Yes.
Because some people may mention, like, well, what about Monopoly and stuff like that? That guy is not on my list because he stole this game from her.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, whatever his name is, I don't remember.
Yeah, but, I remember that.
Which, I mean, granted, that was part of it, right? Like this, but Lizzie McGee Phillips, she invented the Landlord game, which I was looking into it. At that time, there was virtually none, if not none, classic games that kind of technically had a theme. Like, so up until that point, you had stuff like Parcheesi, which was a classic game, Moncala, chess, all those, not
the
really
Goose
thematic.
Game.
The Goose Game, right? Which again doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
But then you had like a little bit of innovation with like some of the stuff that Ravensburger was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But then realistically, you had only at that time like the checkered game of life, which was effectively snakes and ladders, but like over a lifespan kind of thing. And so there wasn't really much as far as theming goes. Well, Lizzie McGee Phillips, what she did is she created a game called the Landlord's Game, where there was two ways to play it. There was one where you're trying to amass the most money, and there was another one that was a social commentary about how absolutely awful monopolistic behavior is in society. And, well, guess which one was the one that got popular? The one that made a lot of money, apparently. But she was an actress, and what happened was she patented the game, which is unheard of, really. But she put a patent in for the game. It got approved, and she effectively put it in the public domain so universities could teach this concept, and all these universities were getting the game and making their own versions and learning how to play it. She invented this system of how that worked, and buying and selling the real estate and selling them for sets and whatever, right? And all these people ran with it, and then that one gentleman found his version, made an Atlantic City version of it, and thus sold it to Parker Brothers. Now, granted, hold on, Parker Brothers did end up paying her for the rights to the game.
After
they bought the patent. Once they found out about it. Right. They were like, you know what? No, like, we need to make it right. They paid her.
Well,
like,
it wasn't the fact that they needed to make it right. They
needed to make it right.
They had to make it right because the lawsuits would have been bad for them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they found that was effectively a rip-off of that. Like, now, granted, she didn't make Monopoly, right? It was this other gentleman who made Monopoly, but it was based off of her system.
Off of her patent.
Yes, off of her patent, exactly. And so they bought it from her, and I did look into it. She has I think one or two other games that are titled to her as well. That she did game design, like probably like, I don't know, 30 years later or whatever. She made a game and they were trying to like promote it, and it's from Parker Brothers also, right?
Yeah.
And so she has a very interesting history, but she was an actress. She was popular for her day, and like I said, if these guys were the founding fathers, then she was the settler. She was the Columbus that discovered this world and created it. I think it's really interesting. Go look into the history of Monopoly.
Yeah, I didn't put her on the list because of just all the little iffy things around that general area.
Sure.
It as much as Monopoly did a heck of a job for gaming wise, and there's no denying that fact. You can say the same thing about Scrabble or anything like that.
Sure.
I just didn't want to touch it.
Yep, that's fine. I mean, I'm still fascinated to this day about like the whole history of that. Yeah. So either way.
All right. So this is my outside looking in, and this is again another personal one for you and me as well. We're big fans of this designer. And I think he deserves to be on this list because, again, the same thing with the Phil Walker Harding. You talk to designers, you talk to other creators, you talk to publishers and stuff like that. They talk about all his designs to the fact that we're spending a bunch of money on his designs, and this is Stefan Feld.
Oh, okay.
He's a prolific Euro designer. He didn't invent it, but he's really perfected the point salad system of Euro games where everything you do is going to get you points. However you want to do it, just do it well. And like Focus Castles of Burgundy, I think is still a stunning game that a lot of people talk about. You look at something like Nassau that's coming out, which is like a miniatures game. You have one of our favorite ones that we just recently played. It's New York City, which was formerly Rialto, which has a little push and pull aspect. And so when you look at other newer designers that are coming out, you could see a lot of the stuff that they're taking from Stefan Feld and be like, okay, I can see where he got this, or I can see where he got that. And so, like, for me, he's like on that outside looking in. The four that I have in my top four, my honorable mentions, or not my honorable mentions, my Mount Rushmore, they're the ones that are the ones that are talked about a lot. They do something, they do creative, but Stefan Feld does have his footprint on the modern board gaming world because people look to him in a lot of his designs. And not just in the designer world too, but in the creator worlds. Our friend Tabletop Bellhop, he's a big Feldian. And he's still designing new games. Like Marrakesh was an amazing game that we played just recently from that city collection, which did really well. And so he's such an interesting Euro designer that I think if he keeps going the route he's going, he may go into the Mount Rushmore of designs, because a lot of newer Euro designers are pointing reference to him compared to some of the guys that are on my list now.
Right.
So, in fact, one of your point salad games is kind of, you were thinking of the Feld style game. So
absolutely.
That's saying, then that's why I think he deserves to be on here, but I don't think he's on that list yet.
Right. I agree. Now, we're going to get into our actual Mount Rushmore here in a bit, the four that we think are just the main ones, right? Real quick, I did an extra little step that I wanted to tell you about. I did compare them to which president I would replace.
I did not do that,
I don't blame you. But I was thinking about it, it's like, this is why I picked this person, this is why I picked this one. And I know you're a history buff. You know the four presidents that are on there, right?
Yeah.
So when it's my turn, pick one of the presidents and I'll talk about that designer, because I don't have a specific order.
All right.
So we'll have fun with it.
I mean, I could sit here and tell you which president these are. So.
Right. And now, but full disclaimer, I do want to clarify. I didn't do this because I'm trying to inflate the significance of what they're just game makers, okay? So don't think that I'm comparing them to like legitimate revolutionary and incredibly important people in history. But I'm also not trying to diminish the quality of the president. I'll explain why I picked each one for each one when I get there.
All right.
All right.
Flip the coin.
Let's go into it. You're starting.
Oh, I actually get to start. All right.
Yeah, that was the first.
So the first one I'm going to talk about is basically my Teddy Roosevelt president, if you want to talk about
it. Oh, okay.
And it's because, one, he's relatively newer, and I actually talked about him on the top of the podcast. And the reason I put him on this list is because of what he's done to the co-op space. And this is Matt Leacock.
Matt Leacock, okay.
And so, think about it. Before Matt Leacock really got into doing like the co-op space, how many co-ops did we get out there?
Right.
Yeah,
very few.
Very few. Then you had Pandemic, which is the big one. Then you have what is the one from Game Right? Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert, all the Forbidden series. He's got Mole Rats from Space, which is a children's version of kind of Pandemic-esque, where it's got those Daybreak we just talked about at the top of the podcast. He's done a lot to the co-op space where now, because of something like Pandemic, because of Forbidden Desert, we get games that give you that working together feel. I'm trying to think of like what I have on my shelf that I can think of that does really well. Horrified is a great example of it. When you're thinking about it, is like you do your stuff, then bad stuff happen.
Yep.
That has been the template for a lot of co-ops, and then people tweak it. You look at something like Return to Dark Tower, which was a classic game that they brought back and put a co-op flavor on it because they think it would do better as a dungeon crawl aspect of it.
Yep.
And I think he deserves this list because that co-op space. People love to work together when you're doing something like that. And then you look at the experiences when we talk about like our memorable moments. Because of his work with Rob Daviau, Pandemic Legacy is reason season 1 is there's a reason why it's an ascended game in our top 8 of 8, because he put a great core system that Rob Daviau put a great story to.
Yep.
And so he deserves wholeheartedly. He is a pillar on this list because of what he's done in the co-op scene. And the reason why I say he's like the Teddy Roosevelt, because he's roughly the newest one on this list.
That's fair. Chronologically, he's the Roosevelt.
All right. Teddy Roosevelt for you.
All right. So Teddy Roosevelt, I mean, let's be honest. Like, he was a wild president, right? He was this crazy figure. He's one of the most interesting people in the world, right? But the reason he's on Mount Rushmore is because he is the innovator of the national park system, right?
Conservation.
Conservation. He was all about, like, when everyone was focusing on what is the United States as an ideal.
And not just
he was focusing on, like, what is it physically? Like, right? And he was like, there's a reason this land is so great, right? And so he was focused on the real life. He was a hunter. He was an outdoorsman. He created the national park system. He has every right to be on that monument because it's part of the national park system, kind of. But yeah, it's because of that. So I had to pick somebody that I felt is all about, the world of board gaming. And you said that you did not put this person on your list. I did. Gary Gygax, I think, just makes sense. Yes, he made RPGs, right?
Yeah.
But that RPG is a game. It's just a storytelling game. It's just not on a board, which some versions of it is, right?
Yeah. The reason, and again, I'm just going to caveat. I didn't put him on my list because I strictly stuck to board games.
Right. Yeah, and
I do separate RPGs and board games.
Right, and I don't disagree with that. The reason I decided that this was justified. Yeah, the reason I personally justified it is because I was thinking about it, and pretty much every fantasy-themed board game has that world to thank from either J.R.R. Tolkien or what Gary Gygax did with Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he built on that lore, added the fantasy that adapts to board games, and therefore thousands of board games have been made because of the world that he did. And that's why I compare him to Roosevelt, is because he created that gaming world. Because if I play a fantasy board game, like, let's say it's like, oh, well, I'm this character, I'm a bard or an elf who's gonna be fighting against this monster. There's a significant portion of people who will compare that to D&D before Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I'm like, that world is created because of what Gygax saw.
Again, like I said, I don't disagree with you wholeheartedly. I think he should be on this list. I personally just separated it because board games versus RPGs.
Yep,
and that's fair. That's the only thing. And plus, like, I could also make that argument, he did a lot in the world, but all his ideas came from Tolkien, too. So.
Right. But then also on top of it, in like the industry part of it, right, he created TSR, which was this massive juggernaut of using the D&D idea, and they made board games, and they did all this other stuff because of the foundation he is. So much to the point that his son now is like also a celebrity because of that alone.
There's a Gygax Con.
Yes.
It's literally a celebration of Gary Gygax in Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. So and what he built led to like JRPGs and and MoMAs and like all these other like it permeated outside.
Yeah, like I said, I don't disagree with you on this pick.
Yeah.
Again, I just separated it. But like you were saying, he's influenced board gaming, he's influenced video games, he's influenced movies to a certain extent. So
exactly.
I don't disagree.
And I think, and I might be wrong on this, but I think like on another comparison, right? Because he created effectively the national park system, Teddy Roosevelt. Other parts around the world have developed that, and I know there's national parks in a lot of other countries because they saw what we did, right? And so again, that's like that world building in a way.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of presidents right now.
Yep.
I'm thinking of the 4 presidents, come like Teddy Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. That's what it is.
Yeah, the forgotten one, I guess.
You.
There you go. All right, which one?
All right, well, just keeping it in line with mine, Thomas Jefferson.
Jefferson Jefferson. All right. All right, so Thomas Jefferson, drafter of the Declaration, right? So he was the one who got all of the ideas and compiled it and was like, all right, I'm going to use this idea. I'm going to use this idea. I'm going to use this idea. That's why he's a founding father. Let's put this into the articles. Let's build our country from this ground up. And so I wanted to pick a designer that I thought uses all the systems, who has dipped his toes into just about anything, and has been able to put it together in different ways, in different forms, and found stuff that works from it that other people have never been able to innovate from. This is Knizia. And like I know that's kind of a stretch.
Guess what?
It totally is.
This is also my number 3 in my Thomas Jefferson pick.
I mean, the guy has like 700 designs, right?
Yeah.
He's been around for like 4 decades.
He's got more than that now. He's got well over 700 because he got the 4-pin papers, and he's still coming out with new stuff.
Yeah. And then on top of it, like, he is not just a game designer. He has written books and articles and literature about that. He's a very well-educated man, and he promotes the industry to be that level of educated. And because of that, like, writing the Declaration of Independence had to be Knizia, right?
Yeah.
He is such a big innovator in that. So go ahead and explain why he's yours.
And the thing is,
I'm glad I'm not the only one on this.
And the thing about it is, like, we talked about it. I'm not a big Knizia fan compared to something like you or something like that. But
I'm not even close, like, compared to some reviewers.
Some people, yeah. But I can understand what he's done to the business. Like you were saying, he's 700 plus things, and he's still coming out with stuff.
Right.
He's reprinting old stuff. He's like City of the Living, when we mentioned it earlier, is a reprint of Prosperity from Astari. So his stuff is staying alive. I'm not a big fan of Lost Cities because I don't care for Math, the board game.
Sure.
But I understand its love out there, and the thing is, he's what modern designers want to be. I've mentioned Phil Walker Harding. You could see Rainer Knizia and Phil Walker Harding's design. I mentioned Stefan Feld. You can see Rainer Knizia and Stefan Feld designs, even though they've been around the same time, but the way he's always reinventing himself in different ways, and he doesn't stick to a genre. Like, when you come out with 700 games, you gotta branch out.
Right.
In all honesty.
I mean, the fact that, like, the same year, Millefiori and Siege of Rundar came out.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, deck building co-op, dungeon crawl, or tower protection game where you're chucking dice and
dice for
deck
combat.
building.
Yeah.
And then you have basically a roll and write game that doesn't have dice with card drafting. It's just like, what?
Like, no other person has that span of games.
Then you have really good push your luck games that have auction, like Raw. You have the Pin and Peck series where basically it's a roll and write, but you're rolling pencils. Okay. You have the, there's another one, Blue Moon City, where it's a smart little card play.
Yep.
Lost City is the math game where you're basically... where you're basically mathing everything you're doing out. And then he's got a line of trick-taking games that are coming out of Brazil. Yep. And so... he's everywhere, and he deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore because of what he's doing, always reinventing himself. As smart as he is a doctor in mathematics, as you mentioned. That's why I always find it funny that Lost Cities is a math game.
It really is, very much so. Yeah.
And like Illumina says, he's churning out games. His mind is just always moving, and it's just amazing what he's doing. Yeah, he's bringing out his old stuff for a new audience, but he's still putting out new games. It's like, it's fine. You got 700 designs, my dude. Yeah. If you only just reprint some of your older designs, I'd be fine with that. But no,
you could stop now, and you've already set.
Yeah, he came out with Sunrise Lane from Horrible Guild, the Pick and Pen series, Mille Fiori. It's like, dude, come on. Yeah. When are you going to retire and just enjoy what you've done?
Right, exactly.
And so I've heard stories about Reiner Knizia that just makes me laugh. When he goes in meetings with a publisher, he takes like a binder, and they're like, hey, we want to publish something. Okay, what do you want?
Here are the ones that you can choose from. Right? You have until this date to let me know.
Yeah, which is like how many designers...
No other can do that. No, nobody else. He's the one who can do that.
Here's your stack of games that you can deal with. Yeah. Which one? Pick your poison. Let me know. You have till here.
Yeah. No other person can do it.
I just find that funny. Yeah. And I find it funny that it was both our Thomas Jefferson picks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. On to our next one. Here we go.
This is you.
Which one would you like?
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln. Okay. So here's the comparison that I'm going to make, right? Lincoln, I mean, he was the one who pretty much changed history forever as far as this country is, right?
In a sense,
he took it from one thing and led it into the very next phase. Right?
And not just that.
And I'm trying to say this as
protected the Union.
He protected the Union. He created not just what was the United States, but what ended up happening after the Civil War was a complete world difference.
I think we have the same designer again.
Really?
Yeah.
Has your designer been around since at least since the early 90s?
Yeah.
Did he pretty much invent a system?
He's basically known just for one game, even though he's done other things, but it's a very massive game.
Yeah, we probably did. Is this what you got?
No, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, I'm curious. All right. So, mine is known for basically one game, but every other game that he's created since has...
He did not make my list.
Yeah, this person definitely did. This is Richard Garfield. I feel like what he did by creating Magic the Gathering, he created Robo Rally first. That was a board game through and through.
Yeah.
But then when he was trying to get it published from a local game store, they said, hey, like, can you make it something smaller, like a card game? He's like, yeah, I can probably do that. Yeah. And also, by the way, professor in mathematics. Throwing that out there, there might be a commonality. But, yeah, Richard Garfield, he created Magic the Gathering. And,
yes, he did, Illuminous.
And he made Netrunner. And he made all sorts of different card games and stuff, which has still...
Basically,
30 years later...
If it was the 1990s and it's a CCG, he had a hand in it.
He probably did. It was that and Pokemon, that's about it, right? But yeah, I mean, he created this new world of gaming that other people... Like, he was just trying to be a board game designer, and then he ended up making a card game that blew up beyond everybody's expectations, created a multi-billion-dollar industry, and created crazy amounts of love for this idea. And then so many people got into that world, fell in love with it, and then became game designers through and through from that.
Yeah.
He's a multi-generationalist when it comes to creating this world. And then on top of it, he comes out with stuff like, friggin' King of Tokyo, right? He has his hand in Mind Bug. Keyforge, right? And he's reinventing that same idea and that same system, but then at the same time, filling in the board game niche of it. Mm-hmm. Like, the whole gaming industry has a lot to owe to Richard Garfield for the creations he's came up with and still creating, that I can't help but say that he really is kind of the Lincoln of this Mount Rushmore, because he reinvented it as a whole.
Honestly, I don't disagree with you on this pick. The reason why I didn't pick Richard Garfield and I went with the one I have, mentioning how you went with Abraham Lincoln on him. Abraham Lincoln is mainly known for one thing: protecting the Union, saving the world without going into saving the United States without going into too much of the historical concept of things.
Yep.
And you said it, for bridging from one part of the nation to the next part of the nation. And Richard Garfield is that. But I also wanted to get a designer who does have other games, but I only want to put one designer who is very prolific for just one game. And so, because of who I picked, Richard Garfield did not make my list. Because Richard Garfield is known for Magic the Gathering. Yeah, he's had a hand in other things, but that is the main game. The one I wanted to pick, and I went along the same lines, is bridging. And the one I went with, he bridged the classic games to the modern hobby as we know it today. Recently passed away start of last year, or in the middle of last year, and he bridged the Euro aspect, showing that you don't need luck to be a playful or play a game.
Gotcha.
It does a really good thing. And the thing is that
it took me a minute to think about this, but yeah.
And for this designer, not only did he bridge modern board gaming from the classic hobby, he bridged board gaming into the lexicon. Basically, you hear sheep for wood because of this guy. You see this game in TV shows, and Big Bang Theory is actually playing this game. You see it in the TV shows. You see it in the backgrounds. Everybody knows this game. It was a big game with the Green Bay Packers at one point. There was a whole article written about it, and this is Catan. And Klaus Teuber.
Yep. Okay. He was on my short list.
And the thing is, like, and as I was mentioning earlier on the bridging, he revitalized modern board gaming as it is. He was the one that showed America you don't need luck like Monopoly or Risk. You can use dice in a smart way. He was basically the one that brought Euros to America, where it was less luck and more strategic play. I'm not a fan of Catan. I like Klaus Teuber. I like some of his games.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of Catan. It's just not my style of game. Mind you, I am more of a modern board gaming because I've only been in it for about 10 years. But I respect what he did. Because, like I said, not only did he bridge the modern board gaming into what it is now, he also bridged modern board gaming into the lexicon, the Americana, the world nations and stuff like that. And it's just amazing what he did with just that one design. That and there was another one that was on my short list. That Klaus-Jürgen Verde was another one on my list because of Carcassonne. Again, he invented a whole term, the meeple, whole equipment and stuff like that. But when I think about that, and that was the first one I thought about, and then I'm like, oh no, I have to go with Klaus Teuber, because we wouldn't have a Klaus-Jürgen Verde without a Klaus Teuber. And so that's why he's on my list. Mainly because of Catan, but there is a reason why he's as big, and a lot of people actually talk about how Catan is still their favorite game. This is a game that came out in the mid-90s. So I think he had to be on this list.
Wow, it's hard to think. Did he make a game in the 90s? Yep. Known for one game? Yep. So, yeah, pick your poison. All right, and our last one, our Washingtons.
All right, I get to start the number one, and I'm kind of excited for it.
I think, so there's one that I think that you might have put on your list. But I feel that and it's not on my list, but I feel like you and I still have the same Washington one. So I'm curious to see what you say.
All right, so he's a designer that was very big in the 60s and the 80s.
Okay, yep. It's not who it's who I think.
For me, yeah. And the big reason I went on this one is because a lot of designs you see nowadays, your Emerson Matsuuchis, your Reiner Knizias, your Phil Walker Hardings, all take from this guy.
Yep.
You recently just played one of his games.
Yep, I put my list down because it's the same one.
Sid Sackson,
hands down. Right? And it makes sense because Sid Sackson was the first designer that had every right to have his name on the box. He wasn't a celebrity. He was a game maker.
And the thing about it, too, when you think about it, he was one of the first ones to have his name on the box because people knew his name. It's like we talk about, like, if we hear Phil Walker Harding had a design, Sid Sackson was the first designer that when people saw his name, they went, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. And not only that, he's written a number of books. He's given away like different designs, like compendiums. he was the first reviewer. He would write books about board game reviews. He had the first like real board game collection. I saw articles about him traveling to Europe and then trying to find as many different games that he didn't know about yet.
Yeah.
And he would buy all of them. He had the wall of games.
Yep.
His personal collection was like thousands and thousands of board games.
Yeah.
And like he would do interviews in front of the wall, which anyone does now.
Yeah.
We're doing it. We're rip-offs. That's what we do. He led the way. He was the one who created modern board gaming. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is the one who really had the biggest influence.
And here's the thing. And I talk about it how like other designers, you can feel them pulling from this guy. Emerson Matsuchi, we were talking about, I was talking to the wife about why Sid Sex is my number one. One of her favorite games is Century Spice Road, or in our case, Gollum. It's basically Bazaar.
Yeah.
Most push your luck games can't stop, especially when it comes to dice rolling. What's another one? Acquire. We just played one that I'm like, I'd rather play Acquire. I have a Thunderworks fantasy version of Acquire. There is a reason why he's so good at what he does. And here's the thing. Again, I said he was active in the 60s through the 80s. You want to hear something else impressive? Those games still hold up today.
Yeah.
I could bust out my copy of Can't Stop and still have a blast.
Yes.
We both love Bazaar and think that is a fantastic game.
I played it just the other day.
Yeah. So
loved it.
It is. His games hold up. And again, he was creating games in the 60s and through the 80s. I think he passed away in the late 80s?
No, I think it was like early 2000s.
Oh, early 2000s, yeah. But he stopped designing really in the...
Something like that,
like in the early 90s and stuff like that. But he... Again, his writing, his influence on other designers. I mean, you hear stuff. The fact that he was the first one bringing Euros back from Europe before Rio Grande Games did it, before Renegade, and before any of these board game companies were bringing them back. He's like, okay, I like this, I do that. There is no one else that isn't in Washington on this list for me, outside of like chess designer or Moncala and stuff like that. But even then,
which is more of a cultural thing.
Yeah, more of a cultural, not a designer. Sid
yeah.
Saxon has touched a lot of people in a lot of ways when it comes to their designs, how they do interviews, how they write about board game and stuff like that. So yeah, that he had to be my number one.
I couldn't agree more. Well, there you go. Whew. There was a lot of history in this, and I love it. Like this is already one of my favorite episodes. Like
it's gonna be a long one too, because it's gonna be about an hour and a half to almost 2 hours just for this video alone.
So if you stuck with it, we hope you learned something from it. We hope you enjoyed that listening. We hope that if you never thought about these designers before, that has given you an outlet. And hopefully that'll let you look into them later on in some of their more well-known designs, because they are that prolific for a reason. All right, we want to thank you for tuning in. If you ever want to email us directly, you sure can. We can email us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com, whether that's to enter in future contests.
Congratulations to Chaotic Cabrera and Illuminous.
That's right. And whether that's to give us ideas for future episodes, or even just to reach out and say hello. everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com. Also, we have an Instagram that we've been trying to be as active as we can posting. Daniel or I have been posting on that. Feel free to guess which one is posting which. Sometimes you'll figure it out. I guarantee the Loop and Louie picture was not him.
Not me.
Although it was hilarious. And check us out at instagram.com/everydayboardgames.
As well as all video re-uploads are found on YouTube under youtube.com/@everydayboardgames. If you like what we do, there are 3 things you can do to help us grow on the platform. Subscribe if you're not, like the video, and comment down below and tell us your thoughts on the subject.
And if you ever want to join us on a live episode, like our friend Ithri or Illuminous and anybody else who joins us in our live chat, we'd love to hear from you guys during our episodes. Join us at twitch.tv/everydayboardgames, where we stream our episodes live.
As well as all audio versions can be found on most podcast platforms under Everyday Board Games Podcast. This includes Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, Podbean, and Apple.
So, as always, we want to thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I've been your host, Daniel.
And I've been your host, Daniel.
And we want to thank you for listening to Everyday Board Games.
And remember, every day is a good day for board gaming.